What is their history, what is their motivation, and how do they relate to those around them? So I'll begin with the first question I asked when I arrived at rehearsal. Why does Claudius succeed the throne before Hamlet? The correct answer is due to the Danish elective monarchy system, in which the throne is not necessarily inherited, but could be secured through support of powerful courtiers. Considering Hamlet's absence during his father's death, his reputation as a scholar rather than a warrior, and perhaps the fear of foreign ideals influencing Danish culture, the choice to throw political weight behind Claudius is an obvious one, even if this is not a theme fully explored or outright stated within the play. Within classical readings and interpretations of the text, the focus turns towards differing expressions of masculinity. Does Claudius represent the ideal image of what a man should be, strong, virile, uncompromising to the point of stubbornness? Whereas Hamlet, who is painted as the true Renaissance man, is the antithesis of these ideals. Educated, cultured, and possibly just a little too progressive for the conservative Danish court. What happens then when the gender of Hamlet is flipped? Suddenly the discussions of masculinity disappear as a more obvious yet equally relevant reason for Claudius's succession bubbles to the surface. History is strewn with stories of women being denied power and agency, their claims ignored, their work stolen, their ideas dismissed. And if the old King Hamlet was unable to produce any other heir besides a daughter, it comes as no surprise that her claim was overlooked in favour of the next male relative, harking back to such historical allusions as the anarchy between Empress Matilda and Stephen Plantagenet. And considering there are no textual indications as to why Hamlet was passed over for the royal title, the unspoken implication of gender politics is an easy theme for audiences to engage with, especially as women's agency feels to be continually shrinking in an increasingly radicalised world. I strove to put these considerations at the forefront of my performance, as I tried to portray Hamlet not as a young man usurped of his rightful place, but as a disenfranchised young woman watching the handover of power with the apathy of a person who always knew this outcome was coming and that there was nothing that could be done to stop it. This also gave another layer to the director's decision of Hamlet's madness, manifesting in their ability to see through the fourth wall, directing their soliloquies directly at the ever-silent audience. In a world where your voice counts for nothing, why not conjure up an entire group of strangers to watch and judge your every move? Next, I moved on to Hamlet's motivations, which is often underscored with the Oedipal undertones outlined in Freud's seminal analysis. Freud argued that Hamlet's unwillingness to kill Claudius and avenge his father's death was due to the retention at the phallic stage of his development. This transforms old Hamlet into a challenge to Hamlet's manhood and sexuality, an obstacle to be removed from the ultimate goal of obtaining his mother as a sexual conquest. The most referenced evidence for this is the confrontation in Gertrude's bedroom, where her sexual infidelity is discussed at length, with some Freudian scholars arguing Hamlet is more angry about the sexual cuckolding of himself as opposed to his dead father. The imagery of Hamlet thrusting his sword between the curtains, killing another betrayer in his father's court, only heightens the metaphor. One of the freeing things about playing a female Hamlet is that these psychoanalytic interpretations, which have kept a stranglehold on production since their conception, have to be put aside completely. Freud was mostly silent on the issue of women's sexuality, only adding in the Electra complex after criticisms that women were largely ignored within his theories. Instead, a new relationship has to be explored, one unique to daughters and their parents. The bedroom scene becomes not a battle for sexual conquest, with Hamlet literally competing with the ghost of his father to win the attention and approval of his mother, culminating in the death of a very living Polonius, another intruder and possible challenger to his rightful place. Now we see the complex relationship between mother and daughter. With no sexual undertones, the betrayal of the father figure can come to the surface. The discussion of Gertrude's sexual infidelity highlights the double standard and expectation placed on Hamlet herself, and the death of Polonius is reinterpreted as the protection of the holy sanctum that is a woman's bedroom, which almost hints at women protecting women. Mental health was another theme I decided to play with. My background being primarily psychology, I became fascinated with how depression is expressed differently in men and women. The recent discussions around the male loneliness crisis highlights the increasing isolation felt by men in this modern age, with discussions between peers barely dipping beneath surface level platitudes, leaving no outlet for deeper conversations or opportunities to create complex networks of support. Men are expected to hide their emotions, to put on a stoic facade lest they be considered weak and emasculated. Therefore, simply playing Hamlet as trapped within a deep depression he is unable to conceal is enough to demonstrate the depths he has sunk to. Even years of gender conditioning is not enough to stop his true emotions from breaking loose. Women, however, can respond very differently when they develop depression. As a rule, women are encouraged to take up less space, their silence rewarded as they are reduced to set dressing. For me, this meant I felt only exploring the extreme sadness of depression was not enough. I wanted to lean into the hysterical woman trope, marked by increased activity, disordered thinking, fast dialogue, and twitchy movements. Hamlet has no strength left to hold herself back, to fulfill the role of the quiet, doting daughter. She is demanding attention, taking up space, pushing back against the boundaries of her conditioning to the chagrin of those around her. Since we set this in the 1970s, it was easy to assume that Hamlet was not only well aware of the idea of the hysterical woman, but had been accused of being hysterical at least once when she let her emotions get the better of her. Therefore, her actions are ever leaning into this expectation, and thereby reducing her from a very real threat to yet another silly woman whose inability to fall in line has pushed her over the edge. This stark contrast with Ophelia, whose presentation of madness feels more honest and sincere, serves to highlight just how much Hamlet is exaggerating her symptoms simply to create disorder in the court. A male Hamlet must always be seen as a threat to Claudius. He is expected to fight back, to choose violence, to be cunning and staunchly defending tradition. A female Hamlet can be brushed aside, ignored and underestimated, and that key change gave me so much breathing room within the scenes. If no one pays attention to what a woman is doing, or even listening to her veiled threats, there is no end to how far she can push the boundaries of convention. The audience understands that this is all going to end in tears, and now they also understand why no one else can see the blindingly obvious tragedy heading for the characters head on. One decision which had to be made early in the process was how far did we go with the gender swapping. Ultimately, what with the 1970s setting, it was easy to be more fluid with Hamlet's sexuality, meaning not only did we leave Ophelia as a woman, a character which would be very difficult to gender swap, but we also reimagined both Rosencrantz and Guildenstern as women. It felt freeing to play Hamlet as oozing with sexual energy. Never once considered a legitimate heir to the throne, she was unconcerned with displaying her preferences for current and past partners, and this added another interesting layer to Laertes' warning on his parting with Ophelia. Is this female Hamlet a truly appropriate choice for his delicate, easily influenced sister? It's interesting to note that most countries who impose laws against homosexuality tend to focus primarily on men, ignoring gay women completely, the most famous instance being the anti-buggery laws in the UK. Another clear instance of women's experiences being ignored to the point that people refuse to admit gay women could even exist. For me, the death of old Hamlet felt like a moment of long-awaited change, a chance for Hamlet to take back her agency, sending those around her dancing to a tune they were unable to hear, all of them assuming it would be easy to control this obviously insane woman, yet scrambling time and again as they find themselves unable to predict her actions minute to minute. And of course, this new Hamlet is unfathomable. Not once in her life had anyone bothered to understand who she was, focusing instead on the restrictive ideals of what she should be. Now that lack of interest, that lack of acceptance, means they are unprepared for what a woman willing to embrace the chaos of this new world. For surely any change is preferable to going back to the gilded cage of what she is leaving behind. It is rare to play a character as universally famous as Hamlet. While some might see the decades of tradition a burden to overcome, fighting to be heard in a room already crowded with voices, others understand that this tradition presents a unique opportunity. Audiences know who Hamlet is, his past, his story, his ending. And when his narrative is supplanted with her narrative, those expectations are turned on their head, allowing audiences to experience the play anew. Something familiar, yet strangely fresh. A Hamlet born from tradition and willing to subvert that tradition with every line and gesture. Women are too often robbed of their voices. That, in my opinion, is why female Hamlets are so important. A demand for space which cannot be ignored. After all, how difficult it is to ignore a woman through all 1,400 lines of a 3-hour play. Thank you.